From ABC News, this is a special edition of Prime Time. Now from Times Square, New York, Diane Sawyer.
Good evening. Charlie's off tonight as we welcome you to this special edition of Prime Time, a Prime Time exclusive.
You might look at me and see just a 19-year-old film student by the name of Blake Lowe. You know, you might be right.
In the mid-90s, you said, I feel old, and that it just wasn't any fun anymore.
As far as I've seen it, I've led a life much more than that. Actually, I'll tell you a little bit about one of my most favorite and memorable experiences. The year was 1952. I'd just come back from my tour of Europe. I was there examining different cheeses for a way to scope out the competition. I was hired by the American Cheese Board. But anyway, I was living in Des Moines, the rough part of town. Some of the lawns weren't even green.
What about other drugs?
And I was just completely strung out on Hall's cough drops. I was at my lowest, and that's when I met one of my best friends to this day, a man named Ronald Nussbaum. And Ronald Nussbaum, he was a magical man. He's a man of many talents. One of them actually happened to be flugelhorn. And it just so happens that when I was in Poland inspecting their cheeses, I picked up a little bit of sousaphone. And one day we just said, hey, you know, let's do it. Let's go out and make something. And so we formed the Parum Pum Pum Players, the world's first jazz polka fusion band.
Did you think how dangerous it was?
In those early days, they were just so great. In the studio, cutting the first few tracks, you know, we're very avant-garde. And Ronald, he was really he was a perfectionist. And you know, sometimes his temper did flare up. You know, I would miss a couple notes. You know, I wasn't a maestro. You know.
You talked to him. What has he said to you?
And he would go, "You play that right. You play it right, or I'm, you know, I'm not gonna try it." But you know, he pushed me. You know. So you know, those sessions were great, and so we finally in '57, I think it was, we released that first album, Bavarian Bebop, and got a lot of positive feedback. You know, some of the people who had bigger voices didn't really like it. Billboard, actually, they called it the whitest jazz they'd ever heard, which obviously that was before Steely Dan. So, but Ronald was just, he was crushed by those reviews. I tried to tell him, you know, we have, you know, in the heartland, we really, you know, we need to get to those real Americans, but he wasn't focused on that. He was he's just in a ditch, creatively and socially. I remember his longtime girlfriend. He just kind of stopped talking to. Well, actually, she stopped talking to him. Yeah, but anyways, yeah, it was a bad time, and one day I walked in and Ronald was he was gone. He had he told me he was going out to get cigarettes, and never saw him again. But I continued to play jazz, sousaphone, in many different bands. The Polka Preachers, another one of them. A lot of alliterative bands was a big trend for that time period.
Is it alcohol? Is it marijuana? Is it cocaine? Is it pills?
Yeah, eventually, you know, I worked through my issues, got off the Hall's cough drops, and I switched to heroin, which I think was a little bit lighter, you know. And yeah, the 50s were a great time. Is when everybody knew their place.
I think I just got sucker punched.
And that's my story.
We'll be back tomorrow night at 10 o'clock Eastern Time with a chilling look inside the mind of a serial predator. So from all of us here at Prime Time, have a good night.